Welcome to Faith Positive Radio with Dr. Joey Fawcett, the Christian business coaching conversation that increases your faith with greater joy at work so you love God and others more. Dr. Joey interviews Christian business professionals just like you to discover their secrets for working faith positive in a negative world. Welcome to Faith Positive Radio with Dr. Joey Fawcett.
Hey, Faith Positive Nation, Dr. Joey Fawcett here with you on another great episode where we get to hear from someone whose faith intersects, interacts, influences, impacts, how many more I words can I come up with? His faith. And so it's different being a Christian at work than it is from the rest of the world. And so you may be like me and have nipped around the edges of Bitcoin. Enough to where you would scratch your head and go, hey, what is Bitcoin? What is that all about? How do I play in that space? And so today we're going to help you discover more about Bitcoin. And we're going to help you understand why it's just perfectly fine as a Christian to be involved in Bitcoin. In fact, you may, along with today's guest before this episode is over, thank God for Bitcoin. That's the name of his latest book, Thank God for Bitcoin. And my guest today, Faith Positive Nation, is Jimmy Song. Jimmy, welcome to Faith Positive Radio, man.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be on. I love the concept of your show. It's about bringing faith and work together. And yeah, this book is very much a result of my work in Bitcoin and, marrying that a little bit with my faith in God and Christianity and everything else. And I'm very excited to talk to you about it.
Oh, man, we're excited to have you on today. So let's break it down to the basics. I may be listening to this podcast and say, well, I heard Bitcoin. It showed up in my Google feed one day and I wasn't exactly sure why it was there or something, but then I read about it. Give us a primer on Bitcoin and then take us deeper into why we can thank God for Bitcoin.
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know what it is, you can think of it as digital gold. And I think that's probably the easiest analogy that I can make to it. Fact of the matter is that currency, at least for the last 100 years all over the world, has been more or less controlled by central banks. These are entities within each country that create new fiat currency through creation of debt. And that's the entire system that we live under, is money printed from nothing through the issuance of debt. This is what the US dollar is based on, the euro, the yen, all kinds of currencies all over the world. They're all based on that. Now, why do we call it digital gold? Well, Bitcoin has this property, much like gold does, that it doesn't require anyone's permission, right? There's no central controlling authority or anything like that.
Okay.
And that's a pretty profound thing, because usually the mental model people have of digital things is something like an MP3 file or a photo you took on your phone or something. It's infinitely replicable, right? Like you can get a perfect copy anywhere. And so they think, well, how can anything like that be scarce or be used as currency? Well, this is what we all thought, up until 2008, when Satoshi Nakamoto invented Bitcoin. Up until then, you either had to have a central authority that sort of like told you whether or not you can have this, or there were always sort of like an intermediary and kept like a ledger, much like Visa or MasterCard or some financial intermediary does today. Okay. Or it was infinitely replicable, kind of like the MP3 file or whatever. What Satoshi Nakamoto came up with was basically a way to have decentralized digital goods, and he also made it absolutely scarce. So that's why we call it digital gold. We can get into the details on exactly what that means, but overall, it means that it's a much more honest money than the US dollar is. And as we describe in the book, the US dollar and all fiat currencies really are a cesspool of theft. It is a den of iniquity. It causes all sorts of problems, from politics to our personal lives. We tend to be a lot more materialistic, for example, to our churches, who are laden with debt, oftentimes, sacrificing God's word in order to service the debt by, preaching sermons that are more feel good than anything else. And not because, the number of congregants is the name of the game when you have a large mortgage over your head. So we talk about all of that in the book and all of the ways in which the current monetary system is absolutely horrible for society, horrible for civilization, horrible for our souls. And Bitcoin is a much more moral money that can sort of fix a lot of these ills that are in society today.
So the immorality of it is the fact that current currencies are built on debt. That's what I hear you saying. And so the government just goes out and prints more money with disregard to paying it back. Whereas with Bitcoin, it's different. Explain for us that difference.
Yeah. So to get into this, we really need to understand the current system. And the current system, kind of like you said, is that the government, whenever they want to spend more money, they essentially print it. But the way it works is a little bit convoluted, and it's done that way so that it's hard for us to really understand. They don't really teach this at schools, but this is how it works. Government gets tax revenue of $3 trillion. They have a budget for $4 trillion. That $1 trillion is normally called the budget deficit for that particular year. The accumulated is sort of the federal deficit, which currently stands at somewhere around $27 trillion. Right. Enormous amounts of money. But that extra $1 trillion, where do they get it from? Well, they issue what's called treasury bonds. These are, considered very safe for a very long time. It's what people call sort of like risk-free rate of interest or whatever. But they sell it out onto the market. Now, some other central banks buy this, some investors may buy this, but oftentimes, you have to sell $1 trillion of this. You maybe sell like $200 billion worth. Where does the other $800 billion come from? This is where the Federal Reserve steps in. They are called the lender of last resort for this reason. They come in, add $800 billion of US dollars into the economy by buying the $800 billion left of debt. And this is how new money comes into existence through issuance of debt. Now, it's not only at that government level that this happens. In fact, this happens at every level of banking throughout the fiat economy. So, for example, for a commercial bank, when a business needs a loan or something like that, especially large businesses, they lend them out at something like 3% or something like that over a term of 10 years. Or the corporation can issue bond, and these commercial banks will buy up some of these bonds. Now, again, when they need to go and buy them, where does that money come from? Well, you would think that it comes from actual savers, but it doesn't. In fact, most savers would not take that deal because, however long the term is, it may be too risky or whatever. So they create money to do that. At the retail level, this also happens. So when you go out and get a mortgage for $500,000 or something like that, that money does not come from somebody's savings. Even if they had, lots of savings of people that had $500,000, would they really want 3% return over 30 years? That's a horrible return for your money, given the length of time and the credit risk and everything else. So no, if you qualify, the bank creates money on your behalf so that you benefit by getting access to a lot of money at once, and then you pay it off over a long period of time, and the bank gets interest. So really, the question is, what does this money printing do, right? Like, what does this expansion of the monetary supply at all of these levels, and we're just as complicit in it as everybody else, like, what does that do? Well, what that does is it expands the money supply, meaning that everyone that saved money in the dollar gets their dollar diluted just a little bit. And this is most obvious, not in like the staple things that you get at the grocery store. Eggs are generally fairly cheap still. Bread is fairly cheap or whatever, but it does show up in lots of other places. Think about healthcare costs, right? They're going up very, very quickly. Think about college education. That's going up very quickly. Think about real estate. That's going up very quickly. Look at the stock market. All of that is going up very quickly. So all of that is what we call sort of asset inflation, or the things that tend to be more expensive. Those things tend to go up faster much earlier. And really what happens when this money expands, as we argue in the book, is you're essentially stealing from everybody else that is saving in the dollar. And the thing about that, and of course, we all know that's wrong, right? Like that's in the 8th commandment, right? Thou shalt not steal. You're not supposed to go steal from other people. Just because it's a tiny amount from lots of people doesn't make it right.
Doesn't make it right.
And
yeah.
The
Stick
fact
within,
of the matter,
it's still sin, right?
Yeah, sin is still sin. And the fact of the matter is that a lot of these dollar holders aren't even in the United States. Most of a lot of the dollar holders are in third world countries because they hold the dollar because their own currency is hyperinflating away and so on. So they love the U.S. dollars and cash, and you are really stealing from them. So when we're talking about the current system, and when I say it is like a cesspool of theft, I really mean that, like, at every level, with everyone in the economy that's using these debt instruments and so on, we're all sinning through theft, and we have to think of it that way. And like, it's become so normalized that churches will like take out a $5 million loan to fund a building without a second thought. Right, about who they're hurting, what they're doing, and besides all of that, right, the debt itself is really sort of the reverse of everything that we see in the Bible about sowing and reaping. You're supposed to save and work for stuff, right? That's the opposite of debt, which is like saving, and then getting what you want at the end. Instead, what debt does is bring consumption forward. You get what you want right now, and then you're enslaved for a long time. And this is the verse in Proverbs, which says, the debtor is a servant to the lender, and whether we like it or not, that's essentially what we become. This is why, like, a lot of people that are called to missions, but I have a mortgage, I can't do that, right? I mean, what do you think Jesus would have said, right? Like, drop everything and go, right? Like, this is what he would say, and yet, like, we're bound by money, and we're serving money, and we're worshiping money, and without really recognizing that we are, and we make all sorts of excuses for it, and we say, oh, that's just how it is, and we don't have to worry about it. And this book is a call to reconsider all of that, because there is another system that you can go into, which is Bitcoin, which is not based on debt, which is based on saving, which helps you, save over the long term. And you don't have to be in this very corrupt fiat system, which is ultimately just benefiting the people that are getting to print the money.
Man, you did a great job of describing for us there from top to bottom what's going on. Every time we, sounds like, use our credit card, take out a mortgage, anything like that. And Jimmy, just looking forward a little bit, not only is that a 30-year term on a mortgage that's stealing, but man, I'm even thinking about kicking the can down the road of the debt, the national debt. To my wife and I have been blessed over the last year with a granddaughter. I'm thinking about her generation. All those trillions of dollars are going to cascade down upon her, and kind of like an avalanche, pick up speed as it goes along. So there is an alternative, and it's called Bitcoin, and you thank God for Bitcoin. Tell us why you thank God for Bitcoin, Jimmy.
Well, because it's a much more moral money, right? Like, this is fiat money, the U.S. dollar, the euro, the yen, the naira, the rupee or whatever. All of these currencies are cesspools of theft. They're what we call in the book immoral money, because it makes theft so much easier, and it makes it does not reward hard work, right? Providing value. And we get into the theology of money a little bit. And really, God's intention for money was, it was a way for us to organize society, right? Because essentially what money is supposed to represent is value you've provided somebody else, whether through a good or service. So if you provided bread to somebody, that's worth something, and you get money for it. And it's sort of like something that promise that you cash in the future, and that's what it's supposed to be. Instead, what money has become in the current system is that because there's a money printer, somebody that can generate money at will, they become sort of the masters of everybody else, because they can essentially create lots and lots of debt, or for whatever reason. What Bitcoin does is it takes the role of the money printer away. And this is similar with gold, right? Like there is no gold printer, right? There's no one person that's in charge of all of the gold in the world. If you have a backyard, you could take a shovel and try looking
dig it up.
You probably won't find any, but that is your right to do, right? Like there's no permission required. Whereas if I try to go and make $100 US bill, dollar US bill, I will be arrested by the Secret Service. And
somebody might find that
I will
out.
be thrown in prison.
Unless
right?
you really,
because
really
there's a which is they're the central authority that does that. So that's the big difference, is that Bitcoin doesn't have that central money printer. And that means that you have a much more honest money. It is very, very difficult to steal, especially from savers. Right now, when the government expands the money supply, when they raise the debt ceiling and create another $1 trillion of money or whatever, they're essentially stealing from all of the savers, all the people that have money in the system, that hold U.S. dollars. And again, like I said, it's not just U.S. citizens. It's people all over the world. All over the world. Every central bank has some amount of U.S. dollars usually. So like even their currencies are based on that. So you're stealing from them in many, many different ways. Whereas with Bitcoin, that theft is made much more difficult, and you get into a much more honest economy where it isn't, you can get a loan at 3% for 30 years. At any time, as long as you meet these bars. It's because the government says so, and they provide this facility for you to get loans and whatnot. Instead, it's much more about, okay, if you do want it, then it's a market rate of interest. It's based on what people are willing to lend out their money for, because they won't have access to it, and so on. And that causes all sorts of changes, because one of the things that we point out in the book is it changes things at the personal level, because we have a society that is extremely materialistic. And the reason why it's so materialistic is because they can indulge in whatever whim they want. You can use a credit card and get into debt and pay for whatever you want at any moment. And it's what the Bible calls prudence or wisdom. It's this ability to put off until tomorrow what you can have today, because you're saving for later. It's this idea of sowing and reaping that's been completely lost under a fiat system, because you can just consume right now, and who cares about the consequences going forward. And that happens at every level, right? That's not just at the personal level. There's lots of overweight people for that reason. There's a lot of people that are in a lot of debt for that reason, but it's also companies. They have a lot of debt. They have a lot of, they're obese in their own way. Governments are the same way, right? They're obese in their own way, and they get whatever. Like our politicians spend money like drunken sailors because they can't, right? And this. It causes all sorts of societal ills, and it comes down to the monetary system that we're living in. And if we change that, well, it changes everything. All of those things start getting fixed naturally, and money becomes much more what God intended, which is value you've provided somebody else, right? So you can figure out where you fit into society, where you can provide most value to civilization, to other people. And ultimately loving your neighbor as a result of doing that, rather than about finding places in the economy where you can, what we call rent seek. I think the Bible calls it busybodies, right? People that sort of do nothing but still get paid, because if there's a money printer, well, they're going to practice all sorts of nepotism, crony capitalism. So they'll give money to people that essentially don't do anything. And it's not just individual. When I say rent seeker, people typically think of like the rubber stamping bureaucrat that doesn't do anything. But it's also entire companies, right? Like we have like these zombie companies that don't provide much value to the economy, but they are very good at getting government subsidies. So ultimately they survive, but they don't really provide value. So they're a real drag on civilization. And instead of having them letting them die and letting new companies exist. Instead, you have entire companies full of people that are really not contributing much at all. And of course, government itself is a large part of this money industrial complex, or whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm. So in Bitcoin, there is no central money printer. There's the amount of money that people put into Bitcoin, right? And then that money is exchanged without an out clause. In other words, no way of printing more Bitcoin to bring it in. And
yeah,
so,
there's a 21 million fixed limit for Bitcoin, and
now
there will never
mean?
ever be more than 21 million Bitcoin.
What does that mean? There'll never be more than 21 million Bitcoin.
Well, so one Bitcoin currently trades at around $48,000 at the current moment.
Okay.
But there will never, ever be more than 21 million of them. And each Bitcoin, by the way, you can buy fractions of a Bitcoin. It's divisible down to 8 decimal places. So, the smallest unit is what we in Bitcoin call the Satoshi. And it's currently worth about, 1/20th of a penny. So it's very, very divisible, further divisible than the US dollar.
Okay. So let's say I've got $1,000 and I want to buy some Bitcoin. How do I get started?
Well, you can get started by going to an exchange. There's a lot of different exchanges in the United States and all around the world. I have a friend that I wrote a book with who runs an exchange in Nigeria, for example. I have another one that runs one in the Philippines. But in the U.S., the easiest ways are Cash App, which you can get for your phone. The CEO is Jack Dorsey, who's also the CEO of Twitter. And there's a little button at the bottom which lets you go and buy Bitcoin using your debit card. So that makes it very easy to go and buy some. There are more professional exchanges and so on. Kraken.com is one. You usually have to link your bank account to it, transfer money over, then go buy it on the market, the exchange there. There's also River Financial. That's another one where you can link your bank account and buy, and Swan Bitcoin, that's another one. But yeah, those are just 4 exchanges in the United States that you can go on and go buy Bitcoin.
So I've got $1,000 of Bitcoin. Now what?
Well, so it's very useful as a store of value. And this is a concept that a lot of people generally when they're thinking of money, because we've been sort of brainwashed with fiat money and sort of the current nature of things, which is, okay, well, if you have money, then you need to go spend. And that's all you can do with it. It's actually much more about saving, right? I told you that it was a savings technology, and it is very, very good at that. Right now, there aren't that many good stores of value or good savings technologies. If you keep it in the dollar, it's being inflated away from you. The M2 money supply at the beginning of last year was 15.5 trillion. That's sort of a measure of all dollars that exist. At the end of 2020, it was 19.5 trillion. So it expanded by something like 30%, which is an insane number if you think about it. With Bitcoin, you don't have that like expansion, and it's actually like that ultimately there will only ever be 21 million. So you don't have this dilution effect. And as a result, the Bitcoin price has been going up. When I first got into this in 2011, it was $1. 2013, it hit $100. Later in 2013, it hit $1,000. In 2017, it hit $10,000. So, traditionally, it's done very well because of its scarcity. But store of value, there really aren't that many good ways to store value in the economy. Like I said, if you use the dollar, it's horrible. So what most people do to store value is real estate and stocks. And those two both have a lot of different problems associated with them. First one that's applicable to both is that you have to do a tremendous amount of research. You're wasting a lot of time researching your investments, right? Which stock do I buy? Which house do I buy? And, if you know anyone that's rich, they spend like all of their time like researching this stuff, right? Oh, but, I'll just put it into an index fund or something, right? Like that's sort of like a proxy for it. But ultimately, you spend way too much. They also have high transaction costs. So if you're getting in and out of a stock or something like that, there's commission. If you're getting in and out of a house, that's way more commission. So there's also that. And they're also very easily taxed. This is one, real estate, for example, is one of the highest tax things. So makes it quite difficult. With Bitcoin, the same, Bitcoin that a Silicon Valley insider VC person gets is the same Bitcoin that an Indonesian farmer gets. So like it's fungible, and you don't have to do like research on which Bitcoin to buy like you would have to with like real estate. Which house do I buy? You know that like houses that are identical that sit next to each other can go for different prices because one's on a corner and one's not, or one's going up a hill and one's not, or something like that. So like all sorts of things affect houses. So Bitcoin is superior in that way, and it's ultimately a savings technology, and for that it has been absolutely fantastic. And I would refer you to Michael Saylor, who is the CEO of MicroStrategy, and he described it this way: I can't hold cash because it's a melting ice cube. So he decided to put his entire corporate treasuries into Bitcoin because he saw that this was actually scarce and that it would hold value over time. And he had a large cash balance sheet on his company, so that's what he's using.
So it's a savings mechanism because it's capped at a certain number of shares of Bitcoin, if you will, and therefore the value has to go up the more people buy in, as opposed to it being diluted the way that the dollar is. That's absolutely fascinating. So it de-incentivizes our conspicuous consumerism and helps us not serve mammon, or as Dr. Peterson translates it, that verse in The Message, the bank, right? And even though I have lots of friends and clients that work for banks, right? But you can't serve God in the bank, God and mammon. And so it helps position us to serve God much, much better. And therefore, it's more of a moral system. I love it. The name of the book is Thank God for Bitcoin. If you can go to our website, wherever you are, I don't know what you're doing. You may be walking the dog or something, but if you can go to our website, you can pick it up there off of Jimmy Song's page at getpositive.today. We'll take you right to a place where you can buy it. I don't know if you can use your Bitcoin to buy it there. I think you have to use dollars.
You have to use dollars, but if you do want to buy it for Bitcoin, there's a website, bitcoinis.com. One of my co-authors set it up. You can actually go and buy Bitcoin. Thank God for Bitcoin using Bitcoin.
Oh, no, isn't that sweet? I knew there had to be. We didn't talk about that before. So thank God for Bitcoin. Jimmy Song is the author. Man, you've done a great job in a very short period of time of explaining to us theological and financial reasons why Bitcoin seems to be based on a far superior theological as well as philosophical system, as opposed to our current whoever's got charge of the printer gets to be in charge of everything. So what's a Bible verse for you, Jimmy? A favorite Bible verse that really drives you?
Yeah, and this came, I think, after some reflection and being in the Bitcoin space for a while. It's he who steals must steal no longer, but rather he must labor, performing with his own hands what is good, so that he will have something to share with one who has need. And this is Ephesians 4:28. And it's for me, the verse is not just about like not stealing, which we already talked about, but it's working with his hands so that he will have something to share with one who has need. Now, a lot of people interpret that verse to mean, okay, well, go work so you can give alms to, poor people or something like that. But for me, what it means is go work, go do something with your hands and make something productive so you have something to contribute to the market, right? Something that you are uniquely situated for. And this is the role of money, is that it gives you a way to find out where your skills are most, appreciated by others. Because if you're getting paid a lot for it, at least in a fair market that's not manipulated by governments or whatever, you're providing a service to others, and they're telling you through the payment of money that it is more valuable to them than other things that you can be doing. And in that way, it gives you a direction on exactly what you should be doing in order to help civilization grow and so on. Now, like that's not to say that there are other considerations. Certainly, God talks about treasures in heaven and getting paid up there for things we do down here, and that should, for any Christian, that should certainly be a large part of the equation for what you actually decide to do for work. But for our role here on earth, that verse, what it tells me is, hey, like work with your hands, right? Do something productive. Right. Provide for other people, share with one who has need. Other people have needs, and you have the unique capability and talent and skill that you can contribute where they will appreciate it by giving you money for it. And that sort of proves out, at least in a business context, the whole topic of this podcast is about faith and work. To me, you can live out your faith in work by going to that which the market appreciates, that's consistent with God's word, that helps other people in ways that that you are most uniquely able to fulfill.
That's Ephesians 4:28, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. Thanks for that explanation. I appreciate that. Jimmy Song is our guest today on Faith Positive Radio. Jimmy, what's a website that our listeners can go to check out more?
It's programmingbitcoin.com. The book is Thank God for Bitcoin, and it's written by me and 7 of my co-authors. And just a quick story about that, because I know your whole podcast is about faith and work.
Yes.
So I've been in the Bitcoin space for the past 8 years now, right? Like, and like the past 4, I've been more of a public figure. I published a couple of books, so I've been invited to a lot of conferences and stuff. And I met some Christians along the way, and that's ultimately how this book came about. Was hey, let's we have this COVID thing. Let's study a couple of books together. We ended up studying a couple of economic textbooks that had sort of a moral component to it. Honest Money by Gary North, and The Ethics of Money Production by Guido von Holzmann. And ultimately that led to us like being unsatisfied with those books because they didn't mention Bitcoin, although a lot of the other stuff was there. And finally it came to, okay, we should write our own book. So for me, this book was the exact intersection that your podcast is all about. It was the intersection of faith and work, and a way in which I could bring my faith into my work. Because I've been talking about Bitcoin for many years, and that we could publish this book and get the reception that we have, especially from Bitcoiners. I've been absolutely shocked at how many Christian Bitcoiners there are out there, and that are saying, wow, this really gave me a good foundation. Or even people that weren't particularly Christian, they were like, you know what, I gave this to my dad, who's a Christian, and he understood what I was doing for the first time, and now he's a Bitcoin holder. So for me, it was the intersection of a few things that really was very fortuitous. That feels very much that God was setting all of us up for, and we're very proud of the fact that we can do something that hopefully can impact both communities, both the Bitcoin community and the Christian community.
Oh, that's awesome, Jimmy. So through this creation process, you feel like God was nodding his head at you going, yeah, come on, keep coming.
Yeah. I mean, there was one conference that I got to go to last year because pretty much everything was closed, and it was BitBock Bloom in Dallas. And basically I went up on stage, I gave a talk, and at the end, somebody asked me a question. I revealed that I was a Christian, and I got some claps in the room, which I didn't expect. Usually if you go to a Bitcoin conference, I had assumed that most people were atheists, which I have some experience with on Twitter and so on. But I just sort of casually mentioned, hey, if you're interested in this, I'm writing a book, and come talk to me about it. About 30 people over the next day and a half came up to me and said, hey, I'm a Christian. I just wanted you
They
to know
whispered,
that, right?
didn't
Like,
they?
I'm so glad that you said that you're a Christian on stage. 'Cause I was
Really.
afraid that
Yeah.
and there were 30 people, like one after the other, just kept saying, "I'm so glad you said this. I'm a Christian and I've been in this space for a while." And I was like, "Great, you can help us review the book." I got their email. Like just like the thing that I discovered through this through writing this book is that there's a lot more Christians than people think. And if you are at work, like just sort of like being open about it can help other people be bold as well. And that's something that I found that I didn't really expect. But like having written this book, I kind of felt obligated to be more bold about my faith, which in turn has borne a lot more fruit. And now there are Bitcoiners that are atheists that are reconsidering Christianity, which is really cool and something that
is way cool.
I'm loving seeing. So
absolutely.
It can be a blessing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jesus didn't say you had to have 200 or 300. He said 2 or 3. When you get together, I'm right there with you. So I guess it's just a matter of using the secret handshake or the code language or something, to find one other person. You found 30. That's awesome. That is awesome.
Well, plus my co-authors, and then there's like people popping up and on Twitter telling me how much they appreciated the book. The guy that wrote the foreword is Russell Kuhn, who's the left tackle for the Carolina Panthers. And he's been handing it out to a lot of, like NFL players and sports people that seem to appreciate it too. Many of them are Christian.
Nice.
Yeah, it's just, taking this step of faith like we did, it's very much taking us to places that we did not expect, to conversations that like I prayed all my life to have.
Awesome,
and yeah,
Jimmy.
it's a beautiful thing. And, like that would be my encouragement to your listeners who are thinking about, how do I intersect faith and work? Well, just, put yourself out there and tell people that you're a Christian, because the Bible is absolutely clear. If you're ashamed before me, then I will be ashamed of you before my Father. And I can't emphasize just how important that is. It's not so that you get embarrassed. It's so that you can be blessed. And that's the big thing that I want people to be encouraged into doing, is to be bold in your faith and let God take you and let God bless you, because he really wants to bless you in every way.
And what about those people you'll be loving up on in Jesus' name? They'll be blessed too, right?
I
Jimmy
hope so,
Song, Jimmy Song, programmingbitcoin.com is his website. The name of the book that you want to check out at your favorite bookseller is Thank God for Bitcoin. Jimmy, man, you blessed me. I know you blessed Faith Positive Nation today. We really appreciate it a lot, and we look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Faith Positive Radio, the Christian business coaching conversation that increases your faith with greater joy at work, so you love God and others more. Suggest guests and ask questions when you email Dr. Joey at info@getpositive.today. And be sure to get your free gift of the 5 positive business conversations to have today coaching program at getpositive.today. Until next time, may God bless you with everything your heart can hope for and more than your mind can imagine.